May I know actually how did your journey into mental health started? So, what made you be in this area?
Uh, Quite. Every time I'm asked that, I think about, okay, how far back do I go? Quite. Mental health, my journey into mental health, okay, that wasn't accidental. That was actually by design.
Okay.
But perhaps I can take you a bit further back.
Yes, please.
So I was formerly a practicing lawyer,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm one of those people who did have a career change.
Uh-huh.
Um, I had two children, and I decided that I wanted to prioritize my children. And at that time, legal practice was not compatible with raising my children by myself. So I made a decision. I got into education. So I started working with children. So that's how I went into education. But because I was not trained, I was not a trained educator. I did along the way. I went back to my postgrad diploma in special education. So I am trained and qualified to work with children on various spectrums,
Okay.
like autism and dyslexia and attention deficit. So I'm trained to work with children in those areas. And as I worked with those children, then by extension, I was also, of course, meeting with the families, meeting with their parents, sometimes grandparents, other caregivers. And then it became apparent to me that um, many families, the caregivers also had struggles,
Okay.
psychological difficulties that had cropped up. Regular families have issues. Children from families with difficulties have even greater issues, and that's where itu boleh katakan the seed sprouted. You know, perhaps I should go and get trained because I was already working with giving psychological assistance on an informal basis anyway, just by extension of my work. So because of that, I thought, okay, let me go and get trained and qualified to work in the area of mental health to better support the children that I was working with and their families. But it is such an incredibly dynamic and diverse and wide area of work. Some of um, some of the ways that it has grown for me in my practice, even I hadn't envisaged. Even I tak boleh bayangkan masa I first start dulu that ada banyak susu galuh, in this profession. There's so many areas that you can specialize in, that you have niche areas in. I could not possibly have imagined. And it's very alive. It's one of those lines of work that is very, dia memang kena pada masa, dan what's happening is very current. It will be reflected in your practice. Contohnya lah, just by default of me working with children, so I also then started working with teenagers and then adults because I was working with caregivers anyway. But never had I really worked with the elderly. Never had I really worked with that group until COVID paid a visit. So it was during the, because that demography, the elderlies, were one of the populations that were the most impacted for several reasons, and that those things hadn't become apparent sebelum COVID, because I think kalau tak silap saya masa umur 60 kan, they said 60 was the cut off, right? Kalau 60 and above, diorang tak boleh pergi ke, tak boleh bersocialize, tak boleh keluar pergi berjemaah, tak boleh ke masjid. We cannot, the Sikhs, we couldn't.
Cepat kena infection ke apa semua, jadi diorang kena duduk dekat dalam rumah je. Okay.
And the Sikhs, just like Muslims, are very communal. So we all berjemaah at the Gurdwara, and that's where the elderly aunties are, and they couldn't go and do that. So they couldn't see their friends. So benda tu dilakukan pada masa tu to protect them, to make sure that diorang tak kena infeksi. Tapi the downside of it was that we saw a huge this breakdown in their social structures.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
and then to make it worse, that is the demography yang technologically they are the ones that are the most backward because banyak teknologi diorang tak reti macam mana nak pakai, right?
Pakai kita Netflix ke apa semua tak. Memang
Yeah.
diorang memang bersocialize bila berjumpa dalam
Face to face.
kan. So now they can't do it. Dah lah tak pandai guna Facebook everything.
Yeah.
So they feel like very alone lah kan.
Yeah.
Kan? Okay, I've never thought of that because at least my parents knows what to do.
Yes.
Okay, this is another point of view yang
Yeah.
alright.
So that's what I saw during COVID.
Okay.
And ni kita dah lepas COVID about 2 years now that we are out of it, right? And you know what? I dah tak jumpa really with the elderly now.
They are back to their
Because they are back to doing their usual. There are of course mental health practitioners. There are therapists who are specific in dealing with the geriatric community. There are therapists who work in just that area. Ada juga.
Okay.
So probably untuk dorang dia masih jumpa with the elderly lah. Tapi for therapists like me who are with children and with adolescents and the adults, I don't see the elderly very much in my practice now, which I take as good news because maknanya dorang dah balik, they've gone back to their usual way of being lah. So mental practice is so dynamic, it's alive. What's happening out there will be reflected in my work, and that's what makes it so alive, so exciting. I'm excited every time I'm going to see a client. I'm excited. I'm doing work related to mental health. I'm excited. Yeah.
Passionate, excited. That is important. So that's how you can attend to your client, right?